Okay, and welcome to another episode of I'm a Black Woman. Yes, I Matter. I am on with the amazing Dr. Egheosa Igbinoba, affectionately known as Dr. E. Dr. E, how are you doing today? Looking
I
radiant
am
as always.
well. Thank you. Thank you.
So, Dr. E, one of the things that we've always talked about and have a passion for is education. Can you talk to us a little bit about your own personal educational journey?
Okay. Well, I guess I'll go back to my mom, who was a special education teacher in Miami-Dade public schools for, I believe, over 30 years. She's retired now. But my first experience with education was volunteering in her classroom during the summers throughout high school and my undergraduate studies as well. And then I actually became a teacher after a short time in the nonprofit sector. Became a teacher for 12 years, teaching in DC public schools mostly, but also 1 year in Broward and 1 year in Dade as a teacher as well. So now I'm an education consultant because the work that I did as a teacher led me to career and technical education, which led me to workforce development.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about how important workforce development is. We know that Congress just passed a bill making sure that they're putting lots of money into workforce development programs across the country. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing in the workforce development space? What are some jobs of the future? I know we've gone in on it, and you know some ideas of what are the jobs and the skills that you're going to need for the future. So let's talk about it.
All right. Well, workforce development, really, when you think about workforce, it is the backbone of our society. It's the backbone of capitalism. It's the backbone of everything that makes our society tick. And so we need workers that kind of power our economy because we need work to be able to gain income, to sustain families. And then, of course, businesses need workers in order to generate that income because there can be no just solopreneurs running the whole economy. We need each other. It's kind of that yin and yang. Workforce is the like I said, the backbone and the spine of our society. And so we see a lot of trends happening in workforce right now because and everything is a pendulum, it swings for what's important at the time. So, I mean, I have to go back all the way to 1983 and a nation at risk, where people had the bright idea that we needed more math and science education, that we weren't competing well on the world stage with the likes of China and Russia and so forth. And so you have this big push to kind of push the arts to the side, push trade education, which had been very popular in high schools throughout the previous decades, push that to the side and push for college, which is not, to me, in a bad thing, because we do need, some occupations are going to require college and some don't. But I think now since we had that push, the pendulum swung all the way to one side. Now it's kind of swinging back and balancing out to say, well, actually, trade education is important. Vocational education is important. And so is college. So we're swinging. We had the pendulum one way, it swung all the way back. And now we're kind of balancing out in the middle, where we see the importance of both. What I see trending is toward, it depends on the industry. So there are so many different industries, but what I do see, at least the major trend, is technology runs through the fiber of every industry. So that's one of the major trends that I see. Every industry, if you're in any industry, we have to build the tech skills of the workforce because tech is running through every industry. Then beside that, you do see some industries are waning, and they're switching over to, say, for instance, let me use an example of the casino industry, right? So we have, you're going to need the dealers, you're going to need hospitality and those things, but actually new jobs are being created because now you need even more people that understand tech and computerization and electronics to fix the machines when they break down. They're not just analog, mechanical machines anymore. They're running digitized, and you need folks with software and electronic repair skills to fix those. In the car industry, we're moving to electric vehicles. It is what it is. And then that's pushing the construction industry to now have to get ready and put chargers where there used to be gas stations and pumps. So it just depends on the industry, where these, how one industry actually drives another. But the main thing is that I see is that tech is a driving force throughout all industries.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you bring that up, because I basically have said, just like math, reading, literacy, everyone is going to have some type of tech skill, no matter what role you're playing, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're working in the workforce, no matter what the job is, you have to have some kind of tech skill. And I remember when you and I were talking once, I'm glad you brought up the electric vehicles, we'll need a new type of mechanic, right? Someone who can understand how to repair those electric vehicles. And there's not enough of the folks having been trained now, right? So like we can think about what we will need in the future that's already lacking currently. You might start thinking about, maybe I can get into that. Maybe that can be my career path. Maybe that can be my skill set. And instead of people being afraid, right, they can just transfer their skills into a different pathway. How do you talk to folks about that?
I think I think people are receptive when they can understand what's happening. Don't just let it happen to your workforce. Start to do training and professional development surrounding change. Hire a change management consultant so that you can actually get in front of these things. Like you said, start to pay attention to who your audience is. So one thing that you said about the electric vehicles made me think of another trend that's happening in the workforce. The boomers are leaving the workforce or have left. And now even Gen X is outnumbered by millennials, just about in the workforce. So we have to start to think about who is this next generation of workers and what works best for them. You know, like I've said over and over, gone are the days of the gold watch after 20 years. Millennials are not sticking around for your little job for 20 years. You got to make it, make them want to stay as long as possible, but know that people are just no longer comfortable with staying in one place. Jobs have to also get used to the fact that you're going to have a transient workforce and be prepared for that. But definitely looking at, like you said, just change management, thinking around change management processes, and so that people don't have to have fear. I think people fear what they don't understand and what they don't know. But if you have processes in place that begin to educate your workforce, keep skilling up, and doing it in chunks so that you're not overwhelming folks, then I think that we can continue to at least move forward. As long as the trajectory is moving forward and not stagnant, then that's a good thing. But it's sort of like we are building the plane as we're flying it. No one could have foreseen the exponential growth of technology. And even still, all it takes is one company to do a release, and now things shoot off in another direction, as we saw with ChatGPT. So all we can do is continue to just make sure we try to stay proactive instead of reactive to the changes that are happening in society, and expect change. That's all you can just do, is expect that it's going to happen.
The one thing that we know for sure is something's going to change, right? Well, you mentioned that people should hire a change consultant. And so you have a consultancy. Can we talk a little bit about your consulting business?
Yes. So I am the CEO and founder of Evolution Training and Management Solutions, an education management consulting firm specializing in program implementation and strategy, with a special expertise in career and technical education, workforce development, research, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And I have a long-standing background in STEAM or /STEM education. So those are the areas that I can truly give lots of expertise and subject matter expertise and lend strategy and consulting for.
For folks who may not be in the education field, can you just say what STEM and STEAM stand for?
Yeah, so STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And so in recent years, there's been a push to add arts in the middle of there, which would be the A, making it STEAM, because we see that when you think only in terms of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, that leaves out the creative and the innovation component. It doesn't have to. We want to make sure that it's not, that the creative and innovation components are not left behind. So that's where the A comes in, and it becomes STEAM, which gives that creative outlet and begins to stimulate the innovation parts when it comes to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
So I know that there are some folks who kind of groan a little bit whenever they hear professional development. Oh man, I got to do this course, this class, this certification that my job is making me do. What are some best practices, A, to ensure that professional development is enjoyable, but most importantly, that it actually creates sustainable and lasting change within an organization?
So I think it comes to cultural relevance. So you want to make sure that you understand the culture of your company and that you understand who your audience is. And then you build your professional development to be relevant to your audience. Again, like I said, if your audience is millennials, then you need to make it relevant to millennials. Find ways to design the training that will keep their attention, keep it relevant. And then also, I mentioned this before, also chunks. Don't try to bombard people and make them sit in a room for 4 hours one day on a professional development. If it must be done in one day, let it be that it's interactive. Let it be that it is they are able to practice gradual release. So there's some guided practice, but then ending up with individual and group practice so that they're actually applying what they learned. Because it's nothing, people like to say, oh, we want to make sure that people know this information. Well, how do you know that they know it? They have to demonstrate the understanding. So making sure that people have a chance to practice and have some hands-on interactive learning in any sort of training environment.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. And you also mentioned diversity, equity, and inclusion, which DEI in some spaces has a very negative connotation. We see that there's policies and legislation being passed that are trying to reverse these types of initiatives. What are your thoughts about that? And then how are you sort of talking to folks who may be wary of DEI work or things that feel that they're being exclusionary, even though, of course, in the word, it's inclusionary?
Yes. So let me see. I think that there's this is not new. I think that we've seen this before. Again, here's the pendulum swinging back again, but hopefully we'll swing it on back. So I think we have to just be steadfast because it is the right thing to do. And so just because there's pushback on something that, for one, I feel like many others feel is right, just because there's pushback doesn't mean that you walk away from it and you give up. You push back on the pushback. And so I think that that's what yourself and other folks in our circles in small business in Miami and even for myself in consulting work that I'm doing at the federal level as a subcontractor. We have to just keep on doing things that are right, no matter what the protest is and the pushback is. We'll push back on the pushback. And then diversity, equity, inclusion, diverse groups, diversity is not going anywhere. So no matter how upset people get about it, you still have to face the fact that there are these groups within your organization that you need to address. You need to address their needs. And it only serves to benefit the bottom line of businesses. And the more that leaders understand that, the better it will be. I think back to World War II, and you had previously where women were really absent from the workforce for the most part, except in maybe housekeeping jobs and secretarial and these sorts of things. All of a sudden, the males are all overseas or training to go overseas or having to be on active duty and drafted for the war effort. And guess who ended up having to work in the factories? And no one would have ever known that no one would have believed that they could do it until they actually showed we can do this, but they were excluded before. Look how the inclusion of women in the war effort, it helped us to create the world that we know today. Because I would shudder to think what kind of world it would be if the other side had won. So even though we're not a perfect society today, at least at that pivotal moment in history, we were able to turn the tide to at least have the comfort and joy that we have today. So we have to just keep moving in that direction. And when everyone is included, then there's a synergy that can increase the bottom line. And again, the more leaders understand that, the better it will be for their businesses, the better it will be for society.
Yeah, I'm glad that you keep bringing that up, that actually this is totally great for your bottom line, because the more happy your employees are, the more productive they are, and the more they're working for your company. And again, that affects your bottom line. If we're only just talking from a capitalist perspective, even if it's completely just, I'm going to be selfishly capitalistic, it is actually still in your best interest to ensure that your employees are happy. And to do that is to say, like, we are different people. We are not a monolith. Everyone has different experiences, and we need to iron into that as human beings. And so I'm glad that you brought that up, Dr. E. So you used to be a teacher in the classroom. Mm-hmm. What made you pivot into being an entrepreneur?
So I was a teacher in a classroom, and I finished my doctorate in education leadership. So that was in 2015. And at that point, I had been teaching for 12 years. I knew I wanted to still remain in education, but now, okay, let me use this doctorate that I've, spent all this money and time to get. So let me use it for leadership. And I looked at school leadership, but fate would have it that I was able to find a position as a consultant with a contractor that did work for the U.S. Department of Labor. And so I was able to work there for a couple of years as a contractor in D.C., going into the building and in the Department of Labor. And then I said, well, actually, I need a little more flexibility. I'm also a mom. So entrepreneurship actually gives me the flexibility that I need to address also my children's needs. I'll be transparent. One of my sons needed therapy. And so being an entrepreneur helped me to have the flexibility in my schedule and make my own schedule to some degree to be able to be present for him and be able to take him to therapy during what would have been normal business hours had I maintained a 9-to-5 position.
So obviously you just talked about the flexibility. What are some challenges that you find being an entrepreneur? And then what keeps the motivation going?
Well, the biggest challenge is a 9-to-5 includes a salary. So what you're going to make this month, and how you can budget. Being an entrepreneur, sometimes I have three contracts going at once. And sometimes I've been down to just one. So I have to make sure that I save for the times that I'm between having lots of work, because as a contractor, sometimes when the getting is good. And when you're between contracts, you gotta, it's tough. So that's the toughest part is just getting to the point where I can scale the business, where I know that the income will be steady and steadfast. And but what keeps me motivated again is the flexibility, being able to be present for my kids. I can drop them off, pick them up. I can take them to now I got 2 that need therapy. So my 2 little ones need therapy, different types of therapy. So I'm able to be present for them, and that keeps me motivated. And again, the flexibility also keeps me motivated. That's another workforce trend, is that gone are the days of people that want to sit up in your office 9-to-5 every day. People want flexibility to have they say work-life balance, but it's really just people want to be able to enjoy life and still do work well. And be good workers, but be able to not have all the stress where after 20 years, you're broken down and you're retiring because you can't work anymore, not because you're just ready for a break.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, we're hearing a lot about inflation. We know all the different industries that inflation has hit in terms of, like, venture capitalism, angel investors. Are you finding that inflation is becoming an issue with signing new contracts? Are previous folks kind of, can we renegotiate, how much this contract is worth, et cetera? And how are you sort of maneuvering those conversations?
Well, what I did, at least I've had to change my hourly rate. I had to say, hey, when we first started, that rate, yesterday's price is not today's price. I didn't say that, but that was the sentiment. Basically, in order for me to be able to afford to do this work, I have to increase my rate. So with inflation, I think it's always good to just keep looking at your price and making sure that it's sustainable and that you can pay your bills and be able to maintain being an entrepreneur. And you can't do that if you're undercharging for your services.
Yeah, it sounds like, know your worth. I find that that's sometimes an issue that entrepreneurs have. Like, they don't know, like, the value of the product that they are doing. And so, like, sometimes, to your point, undercut themselves, especially if they're going for governmental contracts. And then you're like, you can't actually do this work, at a sustainable level. So really being thoughtful around what your prices are, looking at your bottom line, looking at your budgeting. So thanks for that, Dr. I want to go back to education again really quickly. So I'm sure this happens to you. I have lots of friends outside of Florida who are like, girl, how you say, what's going on in that state?
Yeah.
And all the things that are happening in education. And I also always want to counteract that narrative and say there are lots of people on the ground who are doing really great, incredible work here in the education space. So I would love to just hear a little bit more of your thoughts around what is going on locally from an educational ecosystem perspective here in South Florida, in particular.
Well, I think what we're seeing is the product of years and years of mobilization of conservative, right-wing conservatives. They mobilized and strategized to get themselves placed in elected positions, placed on school boards to push their agenda. And so we're seeing the product of years of that. We're also seeing the product of years of propaganda with people being tricked into not voting. Sometimes people, I think, and this is just my belief, I probably could prove it if I actually did an empirical study, but many times people are, they don't even realize that they're being exposed to propaganda on, say, a platform that folks know that for maybe young Black people will be on, and they'll start pushing this propaganda about voting doesn't matter. It's a waste of time. We're still singing and nothing has happened. They don't even realize that that's not even a Black person on the other end of that. That's some propagandist that's been hired by a group to trick you out of voting because they know it's important. Anytime that you have to watch when someone's telling you not to do something that could possibly be beneficial, you need to look behind the curtain and see who's pulling the knobs and pressing the buttons, because most of the time they're trying to psych you out of it so you're not in their way. Same thing I feel is happening with the push against college as well. Like, we can't push college completely out. We need doctors. we need pharmacists. Like, they have to go to college. But we don't need college for other careers. But anyway, going back to that. So saying that to say, again, all that we're seeing now is a product of years and years of strategy. And so I feel like that's what, if we want to see something different, and saying folks who don't agree with what is happening in Florida, then we have to also strategize and mobilize, and again, push back. Florida is my home. It's my ancestral home. Generations of my ancestors on my mother's side, because my dad's side, the generations go back to infinity in West Africa. But my mom's side of the family is Floridians, down from the Gainesville area, High Springs, Florida, Daytona, down to West Palm Beach, down to Miami, and what used to be Overtown, then Liberty City, then Carroll City. So we are Florida people. And so I'm not going to give up on Florida. I know some people are, pulling conferences out of Florida. And well, if that makes you comfortable, but the ones of us who decide to stay here will continue to fight and push back, because they win if we just say, okay, I give up, I'm moving, I'm leaving. I'm not going to fight this. This is just crazy. And then we just throw in the towel. No, you got to push back, because again, the pendulum swings, and we just want to make sure that we keep making it swing back to some sort of balance and fairness and what is right. Because a lot of things that are happening now are just plain wrong. There's no need to be arguing. Toni Morrison has a great quote that I don't want to jumble it up, but in essence, she just says, like, stop trying to prove what's right, like going back and forth with people who aren't right and don't believe in your humanity. You're wasting your time with them. Just keep doing your good work. And so I think that's what we have to do. Just keep pushing back, and we can't give up. Like, we're here, and we're here to stay. And you can't have Florida. My peace belongs to me. You have your peace. My peace belongs to me, and the blood, sweat, and tears that my ancestors gave. And for the other folks that are migrating to Florida, you want a piece of Florida, you get your piece too. It doesn't belong to just one group.
I know that's right. The pushback, the fighting, the making sure that we keep our land, that we keep doing the good work, the right work, that takes energy, right? And that takes a lot of emotional labor, mental labor, fortitude. So what do you do to take care of yourself while you're pouring so much back into the community?
Well, once in a while, I take a break. So you see, I'm actually not in Florida right now. I'm visiting a friend in Maryland just for a couple of days. So taking those little breaks, doing things, even enjoying. We have such a beautiful landscape to enjoy in South Florida. Taking a beach day. The South Florida small business Black community does lots of great events. So I actually, at the end of the day, sometimes can relax and release at some of those great mixers and things. So just keeping that balance, and not that the balance is always 50-50, but at a moment, I might have to be 90%, straight laced, and then 10% fun and games. And then at another time, I could be 50-50 because things are flowing. So just always continually finding the good, that good equilibrium that to be able to keep going forward. And sometimes you may have to just completely disconnect for a week or so, and then you can come back fighting, but just never giving up. And I think all of us, again, who don't agree with what's going on, we have to tag team each other. I was in choir in high school, and the choir director taught us the choir could literally hold a note for like 10 minutes. And it's not because each individual was singing for 10 minutes. And if any of my choir folks from Miami Northwestern payback program under the direction of Mr. Columbus Smith will ever see this, they'll know what I'm talking about. But the choir could hold a note for 10 minutes. You know why? Because we would actually, I'm giving away a secret here. We would hold hands lightly, and we would pass the moment to be able to take a breath. And so you wouldn't be able to see that person was taking a breath, because their mouth would still be formed for singing and taking note, but they would be able to just take a breath. So that made it possible for us to each take a breath one at a time, so that the sound, it just sounded like a sustained note. And that could go on really until you just get tired of singing all together. But imagine that a choir can hold a note and hold a harmony for 10 minutes. That's what comes to mind when I think about this race that we're running. We think about the baton and passing the baton, but when that happens in a race, the first runners, they stop running when they pass the baton. We can't do that. We have to be more like the choir that can hold that note and sustain it. If sustain it in our lifetime, because we're just part of a continuum. That's how I see my life, as part of a continuum for the ones that are coming after me, so that they get to have life and have it more abundantly. And I might not be able to see the final result, but I have to have faith that it's coming. And so we can all just tap each other, give each other a little pinch. Okay, the rest of us got it while you take a break. And when you're ready, after you took your breath, then you come back in. So that's how I see it. Hallelujah.
That's beautiful. I was about to say that's a beautiful image, and like we talk about that, right? We do talk about the baton, but the runner stops. And you're right. We have to keep going, and that this is a continuum that we're thinking about building a legacy. You've mentioned your sons a few times, so let's talk about that just a little bit. How important is the legacy building? What is the world that you hope that they will be able to inherit when they are adults? Actually, I think you have one adult son, right? Don't you?
Yes, I do have one adult.
When the others become adults and as they continue to evolve and grow in this lifetime.
Yeah, so I have a 23-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 4-year-old. So I joke that I have children in 3 different generations, literally, because they're so spaced out. But even for my adult son, he's still finding his way. So what I hope for him, I just hope for joy and joy abundantly. That's what I hope. I want Black boy joy for my sons, and for everyone, just to be able to live joyfully. And what that means is a little bit of what I want for them, but also what do they want for themselves? Because, as parents, you may want, I want you to do this. I want you to major in this. I want you, even my middle son is already saying, he's more interested in HVAC and electrical than he is going to college. So I'm still planting bugs in his ear to say, well, maybe consider being a business major so that you can actually have your own business doing HVAC and electrical, if that's what you really want to do. So again, I want them to have joy. That's the non-negotiable. I want you to be happy, because I didn't go through all those months and months and then all that labor to have some unhappy offspring. So I want them to be happy with part of what it means for me and part of what it means for them. And then I also, I think about grandchildren. I would love to be a grandmother one day. And I think about just being able to, again, have experienced the joy of even my grandchildren. And maybe if I'm lucky, like my grandmother, I'll get to see even my great grandchildren. So just to see that joy go down through the ages, and life and joy more abundantly.
I love that. Joy abundantly. I mean, that extra word is so powerful. Be joyful abundantly. Black boy joy, Black girl joy. Just be joyful. I love that. So I do have just a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap up. For those folks who are thinking about being an entrepreneur, but they are single mothers,
okay,
what advice do you have for them?
I say go for it. I say progress over perfection. Start. We have to be realistic, of course. If you are a single mom and perhaps maybe you don't get the financial support that could sustain you while you're building a business full time, start part time. Do it when you're off from work. Start on the weekends, and then slowly, gradually scale your business to the point where you can do it full time. So just start. Progress over perfection. Start and don't. I learned that was something that stuck out to me in an SBA accelerator program that I did called the Thrive program. That was just one quote that just stuck with me. Progress over perfection. It helps you to just do something each day towards your dreams, because if you don't, you're going to look up and time is not waiting for you. So you'll look up and it'll be years and you're still talking about, oh, I want to start this, but I don't have time, or I want to start this, but I got to go to work because I got to feed the kids. And one thing I can say for me and for others who believe in something higher than ourselves, I can say that things have worked out for me. And it's not been easy. There have been setbacks. I've had to start over because of calamity and bad decisions and partnerships and things like that several times. But in the end, things have worked out for me. And I say, when I believe that when God sees your efforts, that faith with and along with your works, it creates results. And so All I can say is just do it, and it'll work out the way that it's supposed to. But nothing's going to work if you do nothing. It's not going to drop in your lap. You have to push, and you have to work for it. And I see that also. I can say that the Miami-Dade community is so supportive for small business. There are so many resources, sometimes so many things that you're like, okay, which one do I go for? Which grant, which accelerator, because there are so many. So especially if you are in Miami-Dade County, Broward area, there are so many resources for small businesses. Nationally, you have the SCORE program. There's help out there to get you started, but you have to do the work. They're not going to just create a business for you, but they have the resources to help support you through the process.
I love that. Any last words for our audience?
Last word, I would just say, I don't know, just best wishes to everyone, and may your hopes and dreams, come true. And I think I've heard this I always jumble up quotes if it's not in front of me, but some quote that kind of says you're an infinite being with infinite possibilities. I just hope that same thing I hope for my children. I hope for everyone at large, just joy and life and enjoyment before we leave here, because tomorrow is not promised. So you got to just embrace yourself today and embrace your dreams and see the world and do wonderful things, and things will fall into place, and you'll see how it happens, and you'll be gleefully surprised at how things will work out when you start to focus your energies in the direction that you want to go. It's like the path will magically, well, I said not magically, but the path will miraculously open up for you.
I love that. So, Dr. E, how can people keep in contact with you?
Okay, great. I'm on LinkedIn at Dr. Egheosa Igbinoba, but you can also find me on Instagram, Dr. E Boogie. That's more of my personality page, where you'll see makeup and shoes along with entrepreneurship. But LinkedIn is my professional connection site. And then also I have a website, evolutiontms.com, evolutiontms.com.
Dr. E, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for spending your Tuesday afternoon with us and dropping such beautiful words of wisdom. I love the fact that we say progress over perfection, making sure that we live life joyfully, abundantly. I'm like, that's going to be one of my favorite new phrases now. So I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. E. Thank you, everyone who has joined us. I see everyone in the comments who said hello. So hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming in and stopping by. I really appreciated it. Until next time, peace.